In this video, I'm going to talk about how to lay down the second layer of your painting. At this point, you should have your drawing completed and you should have finished blocking in your colors. So you should know where all your colors go and basically what shapes those color blocks are, round, square, whatever. I like to pre-mix a few colors just so I have something to start with, and since I'll be starting in the background and I have an extremely simple color palette, I'm going to pre-mix some of the background colors. As I mix, I'll look at the color block in the still life and decide if the color I already have down is right or wrong. It's almost always wrong. So I have to figure out what's wrong with it. And these are the three questions to ask in order to figure that out. So you're going to want to write these down and you're going to want to commit them to memory. First of all, you have to ask, is the color too light or too dark? Is the color in my painting too light or too dark? So I'll look at the color in the still life, I'll compare it to the color I've already mixed, and I'll make a decision. Then I ask if the color is too warm or too cool, and again, I look at the color I'm aiming for in the still life, compare it to my blocked in color, and make a decision. Third, I ask, is the color too saturated or not saturated enough? In other words, is the color too dull or is it too vivid? And again, I'll look at the color I'm trying to copy, compare it to the color block. It gets easier with practice, so it might slow you down at first, but you'll speed up as you paint more. After I get the colors mixed, I'll begin the next step. So you might be asking, how many colors should I pre-mix? Well, for this painting, I did 4, and I would think 4 to 5 pre-mixed colors would usually be fine. However, if you're painting in an area that's a little more complicated in terms of color, it might make sense to have 7 or 8 pre-mixed colors. I usually pre-mix 4 or 5 colors for every object in the painting. That being said, whatever pre-mixed colors you create, you will have to supplement them with additional mixtures as you go. For example, sometimes at this stage you might fill a block in with one color every object in the painting. Add and mix a new color in your palette as you paint. As this demonstration continues, you'll notice that my palette gets filled up with all kinds of new mixtures. So pre-mix a few colors and then mix whatever else you need as you go. At this stage, the goal is to correct colors and edges. You're mixing more accurate colors and refining the shapes you've already painted in. The sizes of the shapes should be correct, although you may need to make minor adjustments here and there. If you have big size or shape problems, you need to go back to the drawing stages. You cannot easily correct proportions at this stage. So focus on correcting colors and edges. You will add details and subtle color changes in the next stage. For this, I'm using 4 brushes. I'm using 2 number 1 rounds and 2 number 2 filberts. I use one of each for the cool colors and I use the other 2 for the warm colors. Although at this stage, it isn't a bad idea to continue using slightly larger brushes, but definitely do not use smaller brushes. I'm right-handed, so I like to begin in the upper left corner and work my way to the right and down. If I start in the opposite corner, the lower right corner, I'm much more likely to smudge everything I've painted. Now I usually smudge a few things here and there, but to avoid it as much as possible, I'm going to start in the upper left corner. Some people suggest starting a painting by filling in the background first and then painting the objects in the foreground. In this case, it's these strange bags. I would say that's a fine strategy for the most part, but it's certainly not a rule that you can't break. You will need to break it, in fact, from time to time. Personally, I like to think about how much time I have to paint and try to figure out what I can accomplish in that time, and I focus in those areas. Maybe I only have a half an hour to paint, which might not be enough time to paint in all the bags, so maybe I'll just focus on the sticks. If I have a few hours, I might focus on the bags and try to get an entire layer painted in. As I fill in all these color blocks, I'm being a lot more careful to use more accurate color. And because I've already got colors down, it's a lot easier to fix them. But I'm also trying to pay much more careful attention to the quality of the edges. Sometimes color blocks have really clear, distinct edges. We call these hard edges. And sometimes color blocks slowly fade into other color blocks, and we would call this a soft edge. This is an important thing to try to mimic in your painting because it does 2 very important things. First of all, it refers to the texture. If you're looking at something that's really shiny, like a glass bottle or a piece of polished chrome, they look reflective because they have clearly defined hard edges. Whereas cotton fabric, for example, might have much smoother gradients or soft edges. That's how the viewer understands the material of the object in your paint. You're not going to show the light source anyway. This still life has a cool, natural, ambient sunlight coming in through a north-facing window on the right side, plus a much warmer direct light source coming from the left side, which is a lamp. The warm lamp is casting hard-edged shadows to the right of the objects, which are very blue in color because they're being filled in with the cool ambient sunlight. Likewise, you can see a few really warm, soft-edged shadows below and to the left of objects. This is the ambient sunlight casting a soft-edged shadow, which is being filled in with a warm-colored lamp. Harsh lighting, like direct sunlight or a lamp, is going to create hard edges between shadows and highlights, as we've just discussed. And then ambient light, like indirect sunlight or an overhead room light, will cast much softer shadows. These edges work to show the light source, and as the artist, I need to make sure I'm copying those as well as I can. So matching the soft and hard edges is really important to show texture of an object and to show the light source. I've spoken a lot about it, but I haven't really told you how to do it, and it's really pretty simple. Just blend the edges with your brush accordingly. For soft edges, you'll blend a little more. For hard edges, you might just blend a little bit. Drag the mostly dry paintbrush over an edge. And maybe you won't even touch the edge at all if you want it to be a really hard edge. Another thing to think about at this stage of the process is that the marks you make with your brush will be visible in the final painting, which means they need to work to your advantage. Now this is a high craft type of thing, and I wouldn't expect anyone who just started painting to do a good job with this, but I tend to find that brush strokes that are a little shorter look a little better. Longer brush strokes tend to make things look flat. Also, it's good if your brush strokes go perpendicular to the length of the thing you're painting. In other words, these weird bag shapes are mostly horizontal, so it would make sense that your brush strokes would be mostly vertical. So short brush strokes that go against the direction of the object, these tend to look better. Now this is a general rule of thumb. There are many great paintings that break this rule. Achieving this nice facture in your paint or achieving nice mark making is a very intuitive process. There are lots of great ways to do it right, and there are lots of bad ways to do it wrong. It's the kind of thing that you need to figure out for yourself over the course of many years. Suffice to say, when taking up painting, it's a good idea to keep your marks short and perpendicular to whatever it is that you're painting. Although this second layer is a lot more detailed than the first layer, it actually goes down in about the same amount of time. Maybe even a little bit quicker. There are a few reasons for this. Firstly, you don't have to figure out the location of anything. You already have the path laid out for you. You know which parts are dark, which parts are light, which parts are cool, which parts are warm, and so on. That is work that is already finished. Secondly, there's already paint down, so less of the paint that you apply is soaking in. It sits on top, so you don't actually have to load your brush with paint as often. You may find as you fill in areas that the color you've planned to lay down is too dark or maybe it's too light. That's no problem. You don't have to wipe it out and start over. You can actually just mix more wet paint into it. So if the color you laid down is too dark, for example, take a little white or a little bit of a lighter color and mix it in with the darker color you've already laid down. That way you'll mix the proper color right on the canvas. I do this all the time. It's a great way to add a little nuance to your painting as well. Now if the color you laid down is way too dark, you might need to wipe it out or let it dry. Then come back over it later and repaint it. You can always paint over paint. In fact, you will find that after this layer is done, there will definitely be areas that don't look right to you. They may look a little flat, or they don't have proper edges, or maybe as you were painting it, an area just kind of got too big. It's possible that you misjudged a color and mixed it incorrectly, and you need to go back and fix it. That's normal, it's expected, and that's what the third layer is for. This demonstration is no exception. I can already see areas that are too light, areas where the blocks of color got a little wonky, and I'll go back in those areas specifically with fresh paint and fix them. That's everything. As always, if you have any questions or if you're running into any problems, let me know. I'll help you out. Goodbye, friends.